Okay, well, thank you for the warm welcome and welcome everybody. So nice to be back here today. As I realize this is my fourth time being here, presenting for CareSafe. And because I'm me, just a little disclaimer, I completely reworked this presentation again at 5 o'clock this morning. So I decided to take out most of the stats and data and focus more on stories to help because I feel that it helps people relate and understand a little bit more about what neurodiversity is, that it's no big deal, and that with some effort, and we can all benefit from the diversity of our unique minds. I also may have added a little bit too much information, so we'll just see how it goes. And yes, please, if there's any questions or comments, please, I would prefer just to, uh, yeah, make this an open conversation and have dialogue along the way, and we'll see where it goes. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so here's our agenda for today. So first, we're going to talk about what neurodivergence actually is, and then we'll examine the medical model and how it shaped the way we talk and think about neurodivergence, and how shifting to strength-based lens can completely change how we understand people. Next, we're going to talk about connection, communication, and collaboration, because all of these things are essential parts of working together. And then we'll get into something called complementary minds. This is where we explore how neurodivergent and neurotypical brains don't just coexist. They can actually enhance each other when we understand how we all work. And this part always gets people thinking about their teams a little bit differently. And yes, please do what makes you feel comfortable. Cameras on or off, walk around, doodle, do whatever you do that makes you feel most comfortable. So, in my 20s and early 30s, I spent most of my time working and traveling abroad. It was very exciting. And for the first little while, I spent the majority of my time just trying not to get fired. When I was 18, I took my first flight ever and I landed in Edinburgh, Scotland, and it was like a completely different world. I was totally entranced with everything. Once I got settled in, I was able to find a waitressing job in a beautiful little resort up in the Highlands of Scotland. And during my first few shifts, let's just say people were not as entranced with me. I was almost fired 3 times in one day, once at every meal. Well, let me explain. It wasn't due to my incompetence. Okay, I was 18, things were a little new. It was more because I didn't understand the culture. This led to so much miscommunication from both sides of the table. I didn't understand them, and they didn't get me. I quickly learned to be observant, to be open, to ask questions, and 10 years and 25 countries later, I was able to avoid getting fired and learn so much more about this incredible global diversity which we are all a part of. So learning about different neurotypes is no different. So Dr. Megan Anna Nuff, she's an American psychologist, introduced me to this concept that learning about different neurotypes is similar to learning about different cultures. And if you're able to adopt this mindset, you can understand the necessity of a two-way street of communication and mutual respect. And I think that's something we can all appreciate. Another little tidbit about me is in 2 months and in 3 weeks, I will be turning 50. Now, I do realize this is not something that people typically announce at the beginning of a webinar, but it's just this continual like rumination of who I am, how I came to be this upstanding professional here that you see today. So 50 is a hard pill to swallow, my friends. When I was that quirky little girl right there, turning 50 meant that you were about to retire or about to die. And it doesn't seem that I'm close to either. But this milestone seems to have sent me into a little bit of a spiral of reflection. I've been thinking a lot about perception and how my perception of myself has changed from who I thought I was to how I view myself now. I wonder how other people view me and how it's crazy that at this age I still worry about that. And when I think back, all that I've learned over the years has really changed how I view others. So, can I ask you all to reflect on these questions for a moment? What are your perceptions of yourself and how have they changed? Through this work, I've been trying to give people a sense of what it actually feels like to be neurodivergent. It's not broken, it's not better or worse, it just is. It's a natural part of human variation. So today, by sharing my story, I hope to give you a small window into that world. And for those of you who are new to this topic, a little bit of insight. And for my neurodivergent friends out there, maybe a little moment of connection. So let's talk about what neurodivergence is and what it isn't. So neurodiversity. Every person here is neurodiverse, as every one of our brains is wired uniquely. Neurotypical, often used to describe those whose brains function in ways that are considered typical by societal standards. It is the average or the mean. Temple Grandin, um, she's a professor and autism advocate. She put it this way: asking for a definition of neurotypical is about as unhelpful as asking what the average size of a dog. Is it a Shih Tzu or a Great Dane? Neurodivergence is a brain that functions differently from societal norms and is more common than many people realize. Current estimates suggest that it's around 20% of the world's population, so roughly about 1 in 3 people are neurodivergent. Still, the actual number is believed to be higher due to underdiagnosis, not having access to assessment, and individuals who are unaware that they're neurodivergent or they may choose not to disclose. And while these terms help us understand differences, our minds are so much more nuanced than that. Due to the way our brains are wired, many of us have more than one divergence. In fact, research shows that co-occurring conditions are the norm. So up to 80% of autistic individuals, for example, also have ADHD, anxiety, or another divergence. So when you hear that someone is multi-divergent like myself, I'm an autistic ADHDer and I'm also dyslexic, that doesn't mean that we're just a whole lot more work. It's pretty common among us neurodivergent folks. And these different conditions also don't define intellect, but just highlight the variations of thinking, learning, and how we experience the world. You can have a co-occurring intellectual delay, but autism or ADHD itself doesn't impact how smart you are. It's tricky because neurodivergent traits don't fit neatly into rigid diagnostic boxes. And once you start to realize this, you'll see that neurodivergence is showing up all around you in many different ways. Neurodivergent traits can look completely different from one person to the next, and they also vary across cultures, genders, and even life stages, from adulthood or childhood to adulthood through hormonal changes. And let me tell you, menopause, it's a real thing. Periods of stress, and as we age. So, uh, at its core, neurodiversity challenges the idea that there's one normal way for a brain to work, just as there's no single right way for there to be for blah, just so that there's just as there's no single right way to be human. So, this is a spiky profile, and this is one of the best ways I've found to visualize neurodiversity. This concept illustrates how individual abilities and challenges vary significantly. We all have a spiky profile because all of us has an area of strength and areas where we struggle. But for neurodivergent individuals, these spikes tend to be a little bit more pronounced, with more exceptional abilities in some areas and significant challenges in others. So how the spiky profile works. So this lower area here, the yellow, represents areas that are more challenging. And the middle ring, or ring, sorry, the middle area reflects the average or typical abilities. And then the upper area highlights exceptional strengths. So neurotypical individuals tend to have a more even distribution that fall more around the middle range, while neurodivergent individuals have more like peaks and valleys and excelling in some areas and struggling more in others. And so you also may have heard that of someone being more high, oops, or low on the spectrum. It doesn't really work like that. It's more because neurodivergence doesn't happen on like a linear scale. Instead of measuring someone as more or less autistic or more or less ADHD, it's it's about recognizing the unique strengths and challenges across these different areas. So, for example, someone who may be brilliant at problem solving may struggle with time management, or they may absorb complex information quickly, but find day-to-day executive tasks overwhelming. Or they may hyper-focus on hours on a passion project, but struggle to initiate like routine tasks. This uneven skill distribution is a core part of neurodiversity, and rather than viewing these variations as flaws, they offer unique and valuable contributions that may not just fit into traditional expectations. Now, this is a representation of a neurodivergent spiky profile that came to me at 3 a.m. a couple of weeks ago. And I don't even know if it makes sense, but in my mind, this is how I see it. So like a neurodivergent brain, I feel kind of more like New York. It's like really busy, loud, chaotic. And if we see over, I wonder if I can, oh, there we go. So we see over here, we have working memory. It's not always working that great. We have Apple headquarters for like problem solving. I'm pretty sure that's exactly what Apple headquarters looks like. Like, really great at analytical skills, social interaction, maybe not be so great. The laundromat's closed, we have the taxi, time management might not that be, super fantastic, but we got lots of creativity happening here. And in my mind, a neurotypical mind is more like Alberta. And my friends from Alberta say this is not exactly what Alberta looks like, but in my mind it is. It's more like all the farmhouses are around the same size, and the crops are all very organized, and it's like light and breezy. And when you think about it, they're both very different, but both essential and beautiful in their own ways. So now we come to the paradigm shift. So when I first received my first diagnosis of ADHD of the age of 40, I'd already been working for over a decade as a behavioral therapist, and I thought I knew everything about neurodivergence. But that day, standing in my kitchen, staring at the diagnosis typed neatly on 3 sheets of paper, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief and at the same time a tidal wave of grief and fear. So you see, for my entire life, I've always felt a little bit different, a little weird, a little quirky. And honestly, for years, I thought I just really wasn't that smart. But I could never really figure out what the difference was until that day. So I was relieved to finally know the answers, but in that moment, I felt like the diagnosis confirmed what I'd always feared, that I was broken. But I wasn't broken. I was just misunderstood, even by myself. And many of us who are diagnosed later in life or stuck on wait lists for assessments or don't yet realize that we're neurodivergent, we feel like we've been working so hard for so many years, and yet we just seem to be missing the mark. We're told we're doing things wrong or that things shouldn't be this difficult as we're making it. And so we turn all this confusion inward and we get pretty hard on ourselves. Oops. But even so, I couldn't figure out how I had work in the field for so long, and I still couldn't see the signs in myself. So when I received the diagnosis, I did what any self-respecting neurodivergent person does at this point, and I researched the crap out of it. And so this is what I've learned. Historically, neurodivergence has been understood primarily through clinical frameworks, most notably the Diagnostic and I can never say this word, Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or the DSM, which continues to be a key tool for diagnosis and access to support. And under this model, differences in functioning are seen as deficits or impairments. And so if your attention, memory, or social style falls outside of the average range, you're considered disordered. And this view becomes the lens which people are seen and judged. Then, in the late 1990s, there has been a growing movement towards a strength-based model, one that complements the clinical view by emphasizing abilities, diversity, and individual potential. And it offers a different perspective, one that sees neurodivergence as part of a natural part of human diversity. Oops. So when I received my diagnosis, I could recognize some of the traits through the lens of the medical model. Still, the language in the DSM can be a little bit obscure and hard to understand at times. So it wasn't until I discovered the strength-based model that I could see the whole picture of my characteristics and myself as a whole person, and that I was actually okay. I could see my neurodivergence in bright, shiny lights. And then I was like, oh, yeah, there it is. Check, check. I see it now. And the reframing changed everything for me. And so here's one example of what I'm talking about. So this is an autistic characteristic in the DSM, highly restricted, um, fixated interests that are abnormal in intensity or focus, a strong attachment to preoccupation with unusual objects, excessively circumscribed or preservative interests. I can't speak today. And some examples that they give is like be overly interested in like vacuums, strings, bottle caps, and yes, it can look like this, and this made sense to me. I remember I used to work with this one adorable little 4-year-old kiddo who loved tailpipes. He would do anything for tailpipes. We would draw tailpipes. We would look up all the different tailpipes on Google. We made tailpipes out of paper towels and pretended we had tailpipes, and we would walk around parking lots to look at tailpipes, and nothing could make this kid happier than a tailpipe. But what I didn't understand at this point, that a special interest could also be an interest in like social justice or like a deep love of reading. And no parent is going to bring their kiddo for an assessment because he reads too much. If it fits within social norms, you might just miss it. And why didn't I notice my perseverance or my special interest? Mine's people. I love learning about how the mind works, about learning about neurodivergence, and it's been my job for the last 20 years, so it didn't seem unusual. What was unusual is how much I research this topic, how much time I spend thinking about this topic, and how much I talk about it. And I get bored talking about other things, and I can't hold my focus. And I can somehow twist any topic to neurodivergence, which some days can get tiresome and annoying even for me. Honestly, I don't even know what I would do to have a quiet mind for just one day. So the strength-based model doesn't ask what's wrong, it asks what's different. And how is that difference valuable? It's a fundamental shift in perception. It says this person isn't disorganized, they just have a non-linear way of thinking and connecting ideas creatively and not step by step. This person may not be antisocial, they may be deeply empathetic, but social interactions drain their energy rather than refuel it. So this perspective doesn't deny that challenges exist. It simply says those challenges just don't define that person. So let's go through some real world examples of what it can look like when perception changes. So before the shift, a team member who constantly fidgets in meetings is seen as unrespectful and unfocused. After the shift, we realized that movement helps them regulate their attention, and when they're way more engaged when they're allowed to move around. Before, an employee who doesn't speak up in brainstorming sessions is perceived as disinterested or lacking initiative. And after, we learn that spontaneous verbal processing is complicated for them, but when given time to reflect and write, their ideas are brilliant. Before, a manager who struggles with time management is viewed as lazy or unreliable. After, we understand that their brain doesn't track time the way others do, and this is me, and that tools like time blocking, visual timers, or external reminders can make them exceptionally productive. Or, in my case, my friends give me Lisa time. Instead of telling me we're meeting at 7, they tell me 6:45. Even though I know they're giving me Lisa time, it definitely works. Okay, so I have a couple of videos to show you. All right. So, this is me. So, when I'm trying to hear or comprehend what someone's saying to me, I can't look at their face. There's just way too much information coming in at once. So think about it like, don't think of it like slow processing. Think of it more like deprocessing the information. I'm trying to take in your words, read your face for the context. I'm hearing all the sounds in the room around me. It's just too much. So if I look away, it takes away some of the distraction and I can concentrate. There's something else that I've noticed, and I'm going to tell you now, and you're probably going to weird out your colleagues when you're on a Zoom call with them. But I've noticed that most people, regardless of neurotype, when they're processing an idea, will always kind of look up and to the left. And to see if you notice this the next time that you're talking to someone. All right, the next video.
My siblings know, my family knows, my friends know. So they know that in a moment you may feel me switch in a way that doesn't seem it sometimes people tell me it seems like I've tuned out, but I haven't. To me, I'm fully present to me, but literally what's happened is my attention has shifted in a way that people can feel. So in my head, you may have said something that has just taken me to go like, huh. Yesterday, what happened, I was chatting to friends, and then one of them said, yeah, the shower head is covered in covered, it's got like a green scaly stuff. I got to fix that. And the conversation carried on. And then my brain went, wait, is the green, if you get green, does that mean you have hard water or soft water? Does LA have hard water or does it have soft water? I think it has hard water. It's got additional minerals in it. But I don't think the green, because green, isn't green copper? That's like that's a chemical process that happens when the copper's in the pipe. Yeah. So what you're probably seeing is a manifestation of the copper in the pipes. Does vinegar help? I think I've read something about vinegar. I'm gone. Yep. Now, if you know me as Trevor, you just be like, hey, some friends do that. They just be like, yeah, come back. People who don't know me sometimes will be like, you seem disinterested. Am I boring you? Yeah. People will say that. People will very quickly think that I am just, and it's one of those things. If you don't take it personally, everything in the world opens up to you.
Again, this is very me. I don't even know how many times when I'm in a conversation and whatever the person's saying to me sparks like 3 or 4 different ideas in my head, and I just like go inward and I'm stuck there. And my husband just does one of these and like, are you coming back yet? Um, so when you realize this, the behavior has meaning and it no longer is a thing. It's just it seems when you understand the why of behavior, things become more acceptable and commonplace. So during one of our last presentations, someone asked me to bring up the double empathy problem, and this is a perfect time to do that. So can you tell me in the chat who has heard about double empathy before? Or if you haven't. So is the mixed, and I'm glad to see that some people would like to know more. So here we go. Okay. I'll tell you, Frederick. So the double empathy problem shows us that miscommunication between autistic and non-autistic people is mutual. It's not that one person is misunderstanding the other, it's both sides are having trouble reading and interpreting each other. So traditionally, autistic communication has been labeled as a social deficit, and a communication breakdown is attributed to some of the shortcomings within the autistic individual. However, emerging perspectives challenge this notion, recognizing that autistic communication is rather a difference than a deficit. So this concept was first coined by Dr. Damian Milton, an autistic researcher and sociologist, is where both autistic and non-autistic people struggle to read each other's or understand each other's perspectives. And this model encourages us to stop asking what's wrong with their communication. Instead is what are we both missing in this interaction? Autistic people have their own distinct culture and ways of communicating, which are often misunderstood by non-autistic individuals, and vice versa. And again, psychologist Dr. Megan Anna Nuff likens this cross-neurotype interactions to cross-cultural interactions. So just as different cultures have their own norms and practices, different neurotypes have their own communication style and social expectation. There or count, ooh, there are countless norms to navigate when interacting across different cultures. And it's not about one culture being right and the other one being wrong. It's understanding that each culture operates within its own context and with its own reference points and meanings. And the same principle applies when you're communicating across neurotypes. So what might be considered polite, clear, and appropriate communication in one neurotype may be interpreted very differently in another. So you might be thinking, sure, this all sounds nice in theory, Lisa, but is there any proof? Well, I am so glad. Uh, oh, yeah, we kind of get the slides at the end. Yes. I'm so glad you asked. Dr. Catherine Crompton, based in the UK, and her research team have explored this topic deeply, and let me share that with you. So, these are Dr. Megan Anna Nuff's infographics on two different studies. So the first study was called the telephone game, and you might have played that when you were little with a whole bunch of people, and you uh, pass a message along 8 different people. And so, in this group of 8 playing the telephone game, mixed neurotype groups struggled the most with communication, while the purely autistic and purely allistic, and allistic is non-autistic, groups experienced breakdowns at around roughly the same time. And the results based on sorry, and for the neurotype matching, so uh, in this um, in this study, um, they were trying to figure out who were able to communicate best. So it was either too autistic, too allistic, or mixed neurotypes. The results based on participant self reported experiences were very revealing. So the non-autistic um, pairings reported the highest level of rapport. The autistic pairings reported the second level, highest level of rapport, and the mixed neurotype pairings had the lowest level of rapport. And the researchers, oh, the researchers also required that 80 observers watch recordings of the interactions and rate their level of connection. The observers didn't know the neurological makeup of the pairings, they just simply watched the interactions. And surprisingly, the observers rated the autistic pairs as having the highest rapport, followed by the allistic pairs, and then the mixed neurotype pairs were rated the lowest. So if autism were really a truly social communication deficit, we would expect the worst performance from the autistic pairing since they would be the two like socially inept people interacting. However, the study found the opposite. Neurological matching mattered more um, than whether or not a person was autistic. So, can you tell me in the chat? Um, Is there a time that you can recall that someone did something at work that made you feel included or like you genuinely belonged at work? While you're thinking about it, oh, it's nice to see that it's nice to see that people have had this great experience. So one time that I'm thinking of that has stuck with me over the years is someone who's actually um, here on the webinar. Her name is Julie, and she was a behavior consultant that I used to work with at one of the clinics that I worked at. So when I first received my diagnosis, um, I was very acutely trying to figure everything out, and I felt like I was always a bother to everybody. And so when the psychiatrist had offered for that I could take a drug called guanfacine, and so guanfacine he called it the non-talking medicine. So it's a impulse inhibitor. So instead of, you know, typically when if I'm telling a story or I'm in a group of people talking and something that I think of or something that someone says sparks an idea in my head, even if I know that everybody there could care less about what I have to say, my body will actually implode if I don't say it. And so this guanfacine actually helps with it a little bit. It's it may stop the initial, but once the floodgates are open, they're open. Anyway, Julie and I were sitting at the office, and I was telling her about how I was going to start taking this medication, guanfacine, so that I wouldn't talk so much. And she said, "But I don't want you to change who you are. I like you for who you are." And it was in my head, I was like, "Well, I'm taking this medication for you so that you don't have to hear me talk so much." And it was so meaningful to me that she uh, made a point that I was okay who I was and I didn't have to change. And it touched me greatly. And I think about it all the time and how much I appreciate when different things like this happen, that I can be who I am and people think that that's okay. Uh, okay. Oh, I can't wait to read all these afterwards. Thank you guys for sharing so much. So let me talk you through a few common styles that show up across all kinds of neurotypes and not just in folks with different diagnoses. So we have verbal and nonverbal processing. Some people are verbal processors and they need to talk things out. Thinking out loud helps them figure things out in real time, and you may notice them talking through an idea and landing on a solution mid-sentence. Other people are internal processors and they need time and space to think before they speak. And they may prefer written communication or a heads up in a meeting so that they're not put on the spot. Something else that's interesting about internal processors is when someone's processing internally, it can take them up to like 60 seconds to respond. And so let's say you ask someone a question like, would you like a turkey sandwich? And they're thinking about it. That's a very like if if you are sitting there and you're feeling uncomfortable with the silence, and then you decide to help them out and say, would you like turkey or ham? When you ask the next question, it resets. And so when you understand that an internal processor just needs the time, then that time isn't uncomfortable anymore because that time has purpose. And so when we learn these different things about the people that we work with, then we don't feel as uncomfortable with these different ways of that people think and process information. Um, okay, so we also have direct and indirect communication. So some folks, especially our autistic friends, communicate differently. Um, we say what we mean, no fluff, no reading between the lines. If they say that won't work, what they mean is they don't mean let's revisit it later. They mean it won't work. And something to really realize is, especially in our Canadian culture, we find it's too blunt and we get kind of put off. But in an autistic culture, it's appreciated when people are very straightforward and blunt and just say it how it is. And so getting used to these different types of ways that we communicate makes it's no longer an unexpected behavior. Other people communicate indirectly, relying more on tone, context, or implied meaning. Um, that's interesting might mean I love it or this is a disaster. So a workplace tip is when in doubt, be clear, be kind, and don't be afraid to clarify. Assume positive intent and aim for clarity over cleverness. Written or spoken communication. Some folks are written communicators. They like emails, messages, or time out to reflect and to write it out. And other communicators thrive in real-time conversations, voice notes, or bouncing ideas off a teammate. Offer both when you can. Uh, for myself, if someone gives me verbal direction, I there is after the second word it's gone. So to be able to tell me verbally and then write it down is super helpful. Also, we have visual and linear thinkers. And visual thinkers think faster than they speak. And so, and that's why when visual people are speaking, sometimes it can sound a little bit scattered or maybe even unintelligent because they're kind of going off in all these different places. So I know for myself, if I am trying to explain something, if I write it down first and then say it, it comes out clearly. Um, and the people that I work with appreciate, uh, you know, or that it's not a big deal once they ha understand that I'm just like, give me a second, let me write it out, and then I'll tell you what I'm trying to say. Um, So, a workplace tip, offer both when you can. A meeting with a follow-up summary, a voice memo and bullet points. It doesn't have to be fancy, just flexible. And AI is fantastic with this. Like Fathom and Otter, all the different AI tools that you can use to record a, a meeting or a conversation, and then it like um, summarizes it, puts in action points. It saves me hours of time. And it usually also picks up things that I might not have picked up during the meeting while we were speaking. Sensory processing differences. Let's not forget that communication is not only about words, it's also about the environment. Some of us are sensitive to noise, lighting, visual clutter. For others, movement or sensory input helps them focus, like fidgeting, pacing, or having a bit of background music. Um, During meetings, if I want to listen, I have to doodle, and it looks totally disrespectful. But if I let people know beforehand that me drawing flowers is actually going to help me retain and understand what you're saying, it doesn't seem to be a big deal. Um, Allow headphones, consider quiet spaces and optional standing meetings that people move, doodle, or bring something to fiddle around with. It's not distracting, it's regulating. And like it's everyone can use these tools. You don't have to have a diagnosis. Um, and if you try them, you never know what's going to work, right? Um, and social communication differences. We don't all do small talk. Some people love a good chat by the coffee machine. Others just want to get right to the task. Um, let's go on to the next one. Sorry, I, I, I really just wanted to take a break and read what everyone's saying, but I guess I'll keep going. Um, I heard about the concept of complementary minds through Dr. Temple Grandin, an autistic scientist and inventor, in her book Visual Thinking. She explains that the world needs all kinds of minds: verbal thinkers, visual thinkers, pattern thinkers, spatial thinkers, and beyond. No single style is better, but each brings something critical to the table. So if you think about like an architect and an engineer, you need both to build a great structure. The architect dreams up the vision, like the design and the aesthetics and the human experience, and the engineer is the one who makes sure that no one falls through the floor. But they both can't do their work without each other. They lean on each other um, for their strengths and abilities to be able to complete the task. Like you could be the most beautiful or brilliant architect uh, um, and design the most, what I just said. We just said it. Um, to me, this is the heart of neurodiversity in the workplace. But to do this, you have to understand how each of you work best and lean on each other um, for the great things that you're not great at, for the things that you're not great at. Um, okay, so let's take a moment and think about how view professionalism. So I once read a story about a woman who was getting in trouble for the way that she sat in meetings. She preferred to sit cross-legged because it made her feel more comfortable, but her team didn't see it as professional. And it made me wonder, should it really matter how someone sits as long as they're there and engaged and present with everyone in the meeting? And what about clothing? Maybe it's just me, but traditional office wear isn't exactly known for being comfortable. If someone feels more focused, more like themselves, wearing something a little different, should it really be a problem? Many neurodivergent folks that I know, for example, find comfort in wearing hats. They like the pressure. They find it really soothing. So now imagine walking into your doctor's office and seeing them wearing a toque. Um, I know for myself, I would be thrown off at the beginning, but if I understood that it helped him focus and feel more comfortable, um, would that really matter than the fact that he was wearing a hat? Um, and shouldn't we normalize showing our weaknesses? Um, and this is really hard for many people. Um, but once you try it a bit, you realize that showing your weakness makes you more in the eyes of someone else rather than less. When I was managing uh, a large team, and we'd be having these uh, team meetings, there'd be like 60 people in the room. And I just say to everybody, I'm like, listen, I'm a mom, I have ADHD, so I basically have no memory retention. Please, if I forget to do something, I need you to remind me and remind me again. I will not be upset. And if you ask me to do something, you also have to send a follow-up email because it'll be gone 2 minutes after you walk away. And because I was able to say that out loud, it gave people comfort and they felt comfortable coming to me when, with their own weaknesses or when they needed support or when they had ideas on how to help out everyone else in the office. They stopped worrying about it. And let's try not making it weird. So let's just normalize wearing noise canceling headphones or, if you're having a hard time focusing, once an hour, I have an erg. Not everyone can have an erg beside their desk. But doing some heavy work once an hour helps me to be able to focus for the entire day and I don't get brain fog or headaches in the afternoon. Um, and like any other the other tools that help people focus and support their well-being. And these accommodations just aren't for some people, they're for anyone. So you don't um, knock it till you try it. So when uh, when I first started doing these types of presentations, I was researching all these different things on what is helpful for different accommodations or adjustments. And I was always talking about graphic note taking and about focus music because I knew it helped other people, but I never actually tried it myself. And then one day I tried it and I was like, huh, what do you know? It does work. Um, when I first started listening to focus music, I tried like the white noise, the brown noise, like the whole rainbow of noise. It distracted me. I tried um, classical music, and it was I was not able to think. Oh, sorry. An erg is a rowing machine. I used to be a competitive rower. So yeah, I just put on some super loud music, a little Rage Against the Machine, listen to one or two songs, and I can get back to work. Um, And by fluke, one day I found on Spotify an ADHD techno focus music playlist, and it actually blew my freaking mind. It sounds like you're in the middle of a rave, but I can literally hear like the switch go off in my head, and it is mind blowing how I'm just instantly in focus. So keep trying things until you find something that works, and things will work for a while and then they won't work later. Um, and lastly, like we all need like, wouldn't it be great if we could just admit that it'd be nice to have another adult to make decisions and to help us out with things? Um, I am terrible at leaving everything for the last moment. Case in point, this webinar. So I have a colleague who will make up just like helps me break down different projects and gives me mini dates that are dependent on nothing. And even though I know that this part of the presentation or this part of the project is not actually due on the specific day. Because she gave me that date, it actually works. And so find people at work that you can kind of like buddy up with and who has strengths in different areas and help each other out. So one way to learn about different people's strengths, weaknesses, and how you can help each other out is by implementing or trying out a communication or a work style profile. So this is a, a lot more common in the UK and Australia. They seem to be far and beyond anything that we're doing in um, uh, North America. But this is just a few of the questions I have. I've created this work style profile that has like a bunch of different questions, and you kind of pick and choose which ones that you want to have in your own profile. Um, and so it kind of delineates how you best work, learn, and communicate with your team. And if it's there, then we don't have those misunderstandings and frustration. And so it's not a test, it's not right or wrong answers. You put in whatever you like. And so it you can add in, so I know my time that I work best, and when I need to do headstand work is like 7 a.m. to like 10 a.m. So I don't answer emails, I don't answer calls, I don't do anything. So people will know only to call me after 10, and I only book meetings after like 11 when I don't need as much mental cognition just for to have the conversations. Yeah, body doubling is huge. And if you can do body doubling at work, and there's also tons of different apps where you can just meet up with people. It makes a huge difference. All these different things to be able to help you with your productivity, creativity, and getting stuff done. And if we do this in a universal design type way, where we offer these accommodations organizationally, we save so much time on all the different processes of trying to ask for an accommodation. There's so much shame in asking for an accommodation. Um, so many people, there was a stat once, and it was like 80% of people who ask for accommodations are neurotypical people. And at first I thought that was really strange, but when I thought about it, I know myself, I would do anything. I would try anything to be able to do what I had to do before I had to ask for help. And so if it's just across the board that, we all have access to, you know, uh, like adaptive software and is just available, then there's also everyone can try it, everyone can see what works. And then there's also not the animosity of like, why do they get a flexible schedule and I don't? Or and again, depending on your team and uh, what you're able to do. But if you there's so much creativity and smarts within your team, and once you start talking to everybody, you can figure out all these different things that you can do that it isn't a big deal. It doesn't have to be expensive. Um, it's just it just becomes an area of bonding that brings everyone together. Sorry, someone asked about body doubling. Body doubling is when you just have someone else there and you're working at the same time. So you can do that in the same room, or you can have like body doubling apps is where you have people who are all on Zoom and you kind of meet up, you say hi, and everyone does their work. And at the end, they'll say, okay, this is what I got accomplished. Um, yeah, did I say everything? Yeah, okay. So I just took out a couple of different things from my own work style profile so that you can see what it kind of looks like. Uh, it's and I find if you use a little bit of humor and who you really are and bring it back to being human, it becomes not a it just becomes, it just is. It's not a big deal. You just know how people, and it gives you so much information to how people work best. And if there's if something that you don't understand, you can look at their profile and be like, oh, this is why they're doing this or can't do this, or this is the best time to reach them or whatever else, or what I can do to help them in different situations. So this has some of my different strengths. Um, and then here are some things what I need to help with to get things done. So like provide written follow-ups, bullet points are the best, so much clarity, and you know what to expect so you don't get upset, right? And this is just kind of a infographic if someone wants to do it more in a graphic way. So in closing, think of your organization, your team, and what we've kind of talked about, and think about like what's one thing that you could change in your workplace regarding your diversity? What would it be? And this last quote is I'm part of a HR um, community based out of the UK. And I was talking to this DEI tech leader. Her name is Sam in Australia. And she was telling me about they use a work style profile called README. Some people might have heard README, or there's another one called Manual of Me. There's different types that they use. And it's very commonplace there to be using these types of things. And so whenever someone new comes on the team, onboarding, or someone's visiting, she'll say, hey, can you guys just update your README, your profile so that everyone knows where you're at? And she says to everybody, she's just like, I don't need to know your label. I just need to know how you work best. Um, yeah, so that's me. If there's any questions, um, I'd love to answer them. And honestly, here's the last slide. My email is on there. Oh, no, my website is on there. But you can contact me through there, or my email is lisa@mindmosaic.ca. If you have any questions or anything, I love to gab, so let me know. Thank you so much.
So Lisa, we have a couple of questions in the Q&A. Someone asked, how would someone know if they should be assessed for ADHD?
Oh, sure. So they, it was really funny when it was my director who came up to me and she was like, you have ADHD. And I was like, I do not. And so I just went online, and there's tons of like assessments online that will give you um, that you can do, and it'll say like, yes, more likely. And then you can go to your GP and just ask for an assessment. Um, and see, this is the thing is I didn't have to pay for my ADHD assessment. I just went to my GP and it was done. But a lot of people say that the ADHD assessment costs a lot of money. Um, so that I don't know about. Oh, maybe it is in the different provinces. Um, yes.
Uh,
The other thing too is if whether you have a diagnosis or you don't have a diagnosis of any kind, you have strengths and weaknesses in different areas. And so like if you look up different accommodations or different things that might help someone with ADHD or for those different traits, just try them, right? It's helpful.
Someone else asks, are there unique challenges that occur when different neurodivergents communicate, for example, ASD and ADHD?
Yes. So uh it's so everybody is everyone who is autistic or ADHD or they all of their um traits are show up differently. Typically, someone who is autistic, um, they are very more straightforward, blunt, and say things like it is. Um, the thing that is interesting with ADHD and autism is so 80% of individuals, or up to 80% of individuals who are ADHD or autistic, um, are also ADHD and autistic because a lot of the different traits they overlap, and it just the way that we're wired, it's just a tendency to have these co-occurring um, divergences. The other thing that I just learned, which is really interesting, is there is actually there's a autistic ADHDers, or sometimes is called the odd ADHD, AU ADHD. It has its own presentation. And this is what I found super interesting because when I was diagnosed with ADHD, I was like, this fits, but it doesn't. And then I was noticing autistic traits. And I'm like, well, this fits, but it doesn't. And uh, yes. And so the ADHD and autism together has its own presentation, and it's kind of like the best and the worst of both worlds. But it's like definitely like a battle where, I didn't understand how people kept talking about how ADHD people have a hard time cleaning up because I cannot answer an email until all my dishes are done. And so it helps you like the autistic side kind of helps you with the organization a bit, but then the um, ADHD helps you with the creativity, but getting started. So it's always a fun game, you know?
There is one more question just before we wrap up. Someone
Okay.
asks, how do we help in a workplace for leaders who don't understand?
This is the hardest thing. Um, is because without buy-in from leadership, it's hard to have any change um, that happens. So or feeling trust that you can share or do anything else. So if you have leaders that are not uh, on board yet, it could be learning, bringing in more education or asking about maybe even like smaller pilot projects to be able to try different things so that once you see the benefits, then you might be able to bring it into the larger organization. Oh, sorry, oh, I put my wrong website. It's www.mindmosaic.ca, not com.
And we can put that in the follow-up email as well.
Thank you.
Well,
And yes,
yeah.
it is generations. It's neurodivergence is very genetic.